Hi, I've been on YouTube and I've been looking at all the videos of people that are moving to Seattle or that have moved to Seattle that's never been there before. They decided to go now, well, within the last few years. And it's not like people that go to Seattle have like shitloads of money that they can just waste on moving to a city they know nothing about. I was watching a video today where this lady was talking about how she had moved to Seattle and she went to Capitol Hill because people had told her how great it was. And then she finds out it's got nothing but mostly gay people that live there. Hello. If you'd done a simple search of the different areas that you've heard about and what the community is like, you'd find out that Capitol Hill has a lot of gay people. They have a lot of college students. They have a lot of art. They have a lot of theater and things of that nature, and restaurants built in. Going down the hill on Broadway, where Broadway and Pike meet up, you would have a few restaurants going down the hill, going toward downtown. And she was really kind of stupefied that her friends didn't tell her better. I lived in Seattle back in the 90s. Some of the late 80s and early to mid 90s. And I loved Seattle. I wasn't there for a real long time, but I loved Seattle enough to call it home. I am unable to live there now because of all of the carpetbaggers and mafia don landlords that have jacked up the rent and the cost of living so high that now I can't move back. The one place I would love to call home again, I can't do that because in order to do that, in order to be in Seattle, I'd basically have to be homeless because I could not afford the rent that they're charging. And I refuse to be homeless. So I stay where I'm at. I reminisce about Seattle. I talk about Seattle all the time, which is kind of annoying to some people. But you got people that moved to Seattle, and these videos, they say in the caption, "Why I moved to Seattle." And then during the video, they tell you absolutely they tell you absolutely nothing about why they moved to Seattle. They go around the subject. I suspect that a lot of the single people moved to Seattle because weed is legal there. As that's number one, maybe. Number two is because they figured that it's an expensive place to live, therefore it's got to be better. And they find out that it's not better. When I lived in Seattle back in the early to mid 90s, rent was still reasonable. I got a one bedroom apartment, a nice, spacious one bedroom apartment. I was paying 400 and about $489 for that apartment in Seattle. Yeah. I was always going down to the Pike Place Market to do my shopping. I was stopping into restaurants and I was trying those out. Now, if the internet was up and running like it is now, I could have been doing like food blogs. I could have been doing art blogs. I love food. I love to cook. I'm an artist and I love to draw. I could have really have made something, but the internet was just coming into its own at that time. There was still text-only internet back then. Graphics hadn't gotten that great. Of course, Microsoft hadn't really taken off that well. But the Frasier Crane TV show I don't know whether I should talk about this or not because it may anger some people that like the Frasier Crane TV show, including myself. I happen to love that series, that TV show. I've seen the whole series at least 8 or 9 times. I watch it all the time. I can throw in a DVD at any time and put it on, and it's comfortable, and it's just really a nice TV show. But the downside to that is that when the Frasier Crane TV show took off and Microsoft took off, people wanting to go to Seattle to get a job at Microsoft, they wanted that Frasier Crane view, which that Frasier Crane view did not exist. A lot of people didn't realize that the Frasier Crane show was a fake Seattle with only 2 things that were there was only 2 things in the whole show that was based in reality. One was the Pike Place Market, and 2 was the Space Needle, where Frasier's coffee shop was at, 3rd and Pike, or 3rd and Pine. That was actually that area was turned into a Walgreens. And across the street from where he worked was supposed to be Cafe Nervosa. Now, as the show progressed, the cafe changed areas, and the place he worked at was in the place that Frasier worked at, KACL, the radio station, would have been further down, closer to the Space Needle, in that area, but because it wouldn't have been based in downtown Seattle. Now, a lot of people that moved to Seattle did not realize that the Frasier Crane TV show was a fake Seattle. The park that Frasier's dad goes to was not a real park. It did not exist. Elliott Bay Towers did not exist. To get the view that you would have had to have gotten, Elliott Bay Towers would have had to have been a skyrise apartment by where the Social Security office is at, on the other side of the place, other side of the Space Needle, going up toward Queen Anne. Now, they say that his apartment is based on the Counterbalance. Now, the Counterbalance is a real place. Elliott Bay Towers would have been facing Elliott Bay, more or less. Elliott Bay would have been more where Frasier's condo would have been at. Now, having said that, these people do these videos and they move to Seattle and then they struggle. If you don't know that you're going to struggle before you move to Seattle, then you have no fucking reason to be moving to Seattle. This is to all of those people on YouTube that do these videos, that blog about being in Seattle and doing Seattle and all that. If you don't know that you're going to struggle, that you're going to have a hard time finding a place to rent, that it's not going to be cheap enough for you to have a life, that there's going to be gray days most of the time in Seattle, that it's going to rain a lot, and that it's going to be miserable. Well, for me, it's not miserable. For me, I love the gray days because I don't really like a lot of sunlight. I have issues that I can be out in the sun. Don't get me wrong, I can be out in the sun, and I enjoy being out in the sun, but I like things to be more dim because I suffer from depression. And when I'm in Seattle, that's great for me because I can be out in it and I can really enjoy the day. On a day when it's murky and gray out, I could be at a seafood restaurant. I could be watching the ships go across the Puget Sound toward Marrowstone Island or what have you, and I can really enjoy it. A lot of people can't. But if you don't know anything about Seattle before you move there, you have no fucking reason to move to Seattle. And you really piss me off because You guys are the ones that are making it hard for people like me that really love Seattle, that want to move back to Seattle but can't, because you guys are moving there and you're going to make it work just out of principle. Now, there's been some people that I've seen on the videos that have moved there to Seattle and that have moved away from Seattle because they can't afford it. One guy gave up working at Microsoft, and he gave up his job to go to Hawaii. He was making really good money at Seattle. He'd been there for like 35 years, I think. And he decided he was going to move, and he was going to give up his apartment, and he was just going to go. That kind of pisses me off too, because if you're working at Microsoft, you're making enough money to where you can afford to have a life. I would have a one-bedroom apartment. Being an artist, I would have an art studio in my apartment. I'd be going to like really nice upscale restaurants a couple times a week. I'd be going, I'd be living it up in Seattle. But the cost of living has went up due to Amazon coming in and Facebook coming in and Microsoft taking off like it did. When people think you've got money, they're going to charge you. And when they think you're making good money, they're really going to charge you because they know that they can. The housing market didn't get incredibly stupid until, I want to say, probably around 2000. Then it really started to get stupid. Also, the state of Washington passed a law back in '81 that said that they were not allowed, any city or town in the state of Washington, they could not penalize any of the property owners and landlords for gouging people with the rent. Which means that if I owned an apartment building and you needed an apartment and I knew that, I could charge you like $4,000 a month for that apartment, and somebody will take it at that price. They may not stay there, but they'll take it. And I know they'll take it. That's why I can charge that. And that's wrong. And it's you guys that are just up and moving to Seattle that's got no freaking clue about what to expect when you get there. You have no fucking idea. You're making it difficult for people like me that actually love Seattle, that want to move back to Seattle and lived out the rest of their life. I'm 52 years old. I just turned 52 in June on the 18th. And I would love to spend the rest of my life, the last 50 years of my life, living in Seattle, but I can't do it because of all you fuckheads that have moved into Seattle with absolutely no clue on what's going to happen. Y'all take up all the apartments. Y'all try to do whatever you're doing, thinking you're going to get this fancy job, and you find out you don't, and you end up working at a McDonald's, and you end up working at a Subway, doing double duty because you can't afford the rent now, because you got yourselves into hock. Yeah, you guys are really the ones that are pissing me off here. And I hate to be like this, and I'm not usually this crude and this rude, but that's my idea. I just wanted to do a quick video to let you guys understand that it's your guys' fault that everything's expensive, because you're giving people a reason to charge more for stuff by just being there. That's all things considered, because I consider all things.